Hello everybody. So today in the today's session, let us start with the next module, that is module 2 concepts. So in this module actually it introduces with the three of the major concepts. So in that the first chapter is all about three chapters. So the first chapter is all about file attributes and permission, and the second chapter is all about the shell interpretive cycle. In the third chapter with respect to what, how to actually are going to write a shell script itself, that is how we are going to design the shell script program or the shell script in the Unix operating system or within the Unix system. So here in the previous module we have understood with the basic introduction of Unix operating system, its architecture, and also we have understood the basic Unix commands which is going to be used, okay, with respect to the files for handling the file at commands, that is if the user want to access any of the file within the Unix system means, so which and all the commands he has to know or he needs to understand for the execution, so that he can access all the file, and it's again within that file, if the like copying the file, deleting a file, removing a file. So all these file handling commands you people have understood in the introduction chapter of your first module. And also in the first module we have discussed with how the file system itself has been organized within the Unix operating system. So even that concept has also been covered there. So in the Unix operating system we do have three categories of files: ordinary file, directory file and device file. So all these three categories of files refer with a different content, like the ordinary file represents with a data of stream or a stream of data of characters, in which it contains both printable character and non-printable character. So all your programming concept, what you're going to edit has been represented with an ordinary file, and all your executable files and your object code files have been represented with the binary file. And the second category of device, second category of a file system is directory file, in which it always has been associated with just a file names and with that of a number, okay, file number. So that is what your directory file we have discussed. And also if I consider a device file, it's nothing but all your peripheral devices which you are going to inject into the system. So all those files come under this device file. So it doesn't occupy any space. So these are the three categories of files, and its hierarchy also we have understood. So how the files is going to be organized. So in the Unix file system, we always one particular directory will be there, that is the root directory. Under that all your categories of files will be saved, or it will be defined. So if I have a root node like this, so under this I will be having different categories of file. It might be a device file, it might be home directory, or it might be user file, or it might be what, library file. So all your files will be stored under this root directory, like in an hierarchical tree structure manner. So that is what we have understood, and here we represent this kind of relationship in which a files has been associated to one another as a parent-child relationship. So this is what we have understood. Along with this, even we have understood with the basic commands of Unix for handling the files itself. So before actually handling the file commands or knowing about your file command, we have discussed with how to create a directory for a files, okay, how to change the directory, and also how to remove your directory, and whether the user has been placed under the home directory, and also the path, if the user want to know the path in which he is. So even that variable commands have been discussed in the previous module. So if you have come across with all these basic concepts in the introduction module means, so in the second module we are and along with that even we have understood in the module first how to handle the file commands, like copy command, remove command, delete command, bc command, od command, wc command. So all these, so copy, and the name itself says that cp command, and like for copying, rm for removing, mv for renaming a file or moving a file. Next wc is for counting a word count within a file, and bc command for calculator purpose, and od command for displaying a non-printable data. So these are the contents what we have discussed in the module first. So in the second module, the continuation part of the file system has been discussed, in which in the first module one of the command which we have discussed was the ls command, wherein which in that ls command we have understood that ls command is basically used for listing the file contents or displaying the file attributes. So in which in that file content it might be few of the content like who is the owner of that file, who is the whether that file has been under some group, or when was that file was created and the last modification time, and whether it is a ordinary file or whether it is a directory file. So all these information and who is owning that file, owner of that file, and how much bytes of data has been included within that file, amount of data stored within that file. So all these information you can list out by using the ls command itself. So not only it is going to display or list out the list of files in your current directory on which you are working, along with that by using few of its attributes of that ls command. In that one of the attribute was like a few of the attributes we have already discussed, like -a for displaying the hidden files, capital X is for displaying what in a multi-columnar output, -f for displaying what all your directory files in an hierarchy, and -r is for recursive displaying recursively all your list of files, and likewise we do have -small x which was usually was displaying the directory files itself. Along with that we had discussed with -l, -u, -t like that, right. -l it represents a long listing files in an ASCII collecting sequence. -u so as I was mentioning, -a we have discussed, -x, capital X, -f we have discussed, -r for this ls command we have discussed. Okay. Along with that even we have discussed with what one more option, -l, -u and -t. So what does this -a represent here? So it is going to display you with an hidden files, -x for listing the directory files, directory content files, and -x multi-columnar output for displaying the multi-columnar output, -f all your directory files to list out, -r listing out the recursive all the files along with the directory files, ordinary files, and along with the directory files. This is for -l is for long listing file in an ASCII collating sequence. So this option actually display you complete information about what the content of that file itself, like who is the owner of that file, whether the file permission has been provided for all the 3 categories of user which has been associated for that file, okay, and when it was last modified time, and the byte size of that file. So all those has been listed out in -l. -u is for last modification time, -t is also for the same, but here it is not going to display with what last modified, but it is going to sort out the content with the last modified time. So these are the options what we have discussed in the previous first module. So in the second module the continuation of the same in which but we are going to discuss with the file attributes of those commands followed by the permission. Okay. So like for example if I have considered one of the file within some directory, means I have created of some programming file, can I use that file for, can I make that file to be provided for all the other user publicly, like for not only for just an owner, he can protect, even he can provide access for group, he can provide access for publicly as for others also, or else he can make it as what only accessible for the owner itself. So how this can be done? So that is being done by using what a file permission command. So that also we are going to discuss in this first chapter. So that is what we are going to discuss in the module 2 first chapter. In the second chapter, the shell interpretive cycle, we are going to discuss with what the actual shell concept. So how it is being acting as an interface between the kernel and the user application. So that we are going to understand completely the working of it, the shell interpreter cycle, and also we are going to understand few of the meta characters for interpreting the command which has been used. All those characters has been used within the Unix command. Next we are going to discuss with what shell script or a program, which means that in this third chapter you will understand all your basic programming concept for writing or designing a shell script itself. like how to the controlling statement, how to define a variable within a Unix system, and how to read the data, how to display the data, so how to read the input. Okay, so all these things for writing a program we are going to discuss within this shell script. Even the control statements also, all those control statements like if statement, looping statements, so all these statements will be understood in this shell script concept. So these are the 3 chapters we are going to discuss with the module 2. So let us come with the first chapter of this module 2. So that is here in the first chapter, basic file attributes and permission. In the basic file attribute chapter, we are going to discuss with the continuation of this command, ls command, with the -l option. So this is going to provide you, as I said, as I have mentioned on the board here, it is going to list the file attributes. ls-l, it is going to list the file attributes in a long listing ASCII collating sequence. ASCII collating sequence means it is going to list out the 7 data or the 7 attribute 7 types of attribute data for this ls command. So let us consider one simple example of this ls command, that is ls-l. So what does this ls-l command represent? So as I said, ls command always it is going to display the list of files within the current directory, and if you have specified with an option L, then it is going to display all the content of that particular file. The contents might be like, first let me consider here. So this is how once you execute the ls-l, a 7 contents or 7 attribute content data will be displayed. So in that the first one is, this is the first column. Okay, so before that, in the first line it will display total 42, which means that it is this total 42 always represent the number of file associated, indicates the 42 blocks of data has been occupied within that current directory on which ls command has been executed. Okay, next this is below that it will display what, this complete line what I have written. So here again it is going to list out. As of now, I have assumed that only 2 files are there within this directory, current directory. So one I have displayed with the ordinary file, okay, and the other one I have displayed with the file permission with what, the directory file. So I let you know what all these data what have represented as an output for this command represent. So this is your first column, this is your second column, this is your third column, this is fourth column, and this is 5th column, this is 6th, 7th, and this is 8th, and this is the 9th column. So what all these output which I have represented in the form of a column represents here. So the first column or the first data what has been displayed here, so this always displays the type of file and the permission associated for that file. Okay, so type of file, as we have discussed in the previous chapter, we do have 3 types of files: ordinary file, device file, and directory file, right? So whether in these 3 categories the file has been associated. So here if the first character in the file in the first column of this file type and permission, okay, so if the first character itself is of what, hyphen, this represents that this is an ordinary file. Okay, and this complete what I have written here. Okay, so this complete what I have written here. So rw underscore r underscore underscore again r underscore underscore. So this 3 permission or the first 3 character here represent, r represent read, w represent write, and underscore no permission has been assigned as of now. Okay, likewise this belongs to one category, this 3 character belong to second category of file permission, thus 3 belong to third category of file permission. So the first category is nothing but the user, the second category is nothing but the group, it belongs, the permission belongs to group, then the last category represents what, others. So this is for group, this is for user. So let me write here itself, this is for user, this 3 character is for group, and this 3 character is for others. So UGO, so user, group and others. The file, like here the file name is what? Chapter 1. So this file has been associated with the permission. For the user only read and write permission has been associated. If it is an underscore means no permission. So this third category, the third character in the first group represent what? This is X. X represent here executable, that is the file can be executed. So if it is not present, if it is just an underscore means executable permission is not been provided for the user. Next, for group only read permission, for others only read permission. So in the file permission we do have, in the file permission we do have three characters represented. One is R, W and X. So R represents read, W represent write and X represent execute. And in the file type, we have -d. So hyphen represents what? Ordinary. It's an ordinary type of file, and this represents directory type of file. Okay, so this is what the first column represent, that is file type and its permission. So in the file type and its permission in the first column, whether if it is an ordinary file, always it is represented with an hyphen. If it is an directory file, the first character of that permission will be represented with D. So D represents here, it is of directory file. As you can see here, help dir, that is it's a directory file. Chapter 01 is a normal ordinary file. So this is about a first column of the output of ls-l. So the next column output is what? The second column represent the file link. Okay, the file link means the number of associated file linked to that particular file. So how many files have been linked for that file? So that number has been specified with this second column. Okay, whether for user it has been linked for user, it has been linked for public, for the other user or multiple user. So that number will be displayed for in the second column of your output. So third column of the output of this ls-l is what? Third column of the output is ownership of the file. So here the owner of the file or the user of that particular file is what? Kumar. Okay, so this third column represents, so this represent, the first column represent file type and permission. Second column represent link. Third column represent ownership of the file. This represent a group associated with that file, associated group of that file. This represent file size. These three, 6th, 7th and 8th column represent the last modification time, last modification time, and the last column represent the file name, and that file name might be a directory file or it might be a normal ordinary file. So these are the 7 category of output which will be displayed if you execute ls-l. So in the first column, as I have already discussed, it represents the file type and permission. So file type, whether it might be an ordinary file or it might be a directory file or it might be a device file also. Okay, next is what? In the second column, so in the permission it has been represented with RWX. So RWX here, read, write and execute. So in the ordinary file, for none of the user an executable permission has been provided, whereas for user only write permission has been provided. For group and others no write permission has been provided, but read permission has been assigned for all the 3 categories of user here. Next, second column represent link. The number of file associated for that particular file is represented with the link. And third column ownership. So the owner of this one is directory file and the other normal file, ordinary file is Kumar, and to which group this file belongs to. So group associated of that particular file. So associated with metal group, or it might be a database group also. Okay. So next, the size, that is 5th column represent the file size. So this represent the data, the amount of data associated with that file. It doesn't specify you with the space of the disk, that is a space of the file which has been associated with the disk. Instead, it is going to get you the count of number of character count in terms of bytes. Okay, so that is what this file size represents. That is the amount of data associated for that particular file, but it is going to get you the number of characters count in that particular file, with representation of bytes. Okay, so next three columns, 6th, 7th and 8th column, represent the last modification type of that file. For example, in the last modification type of file, it represents the on which month it was created or modified, on which day and at what time. Okay, so this is what you are going to get the output for your ls-l, and the last column represents what? The file name, whether it is a directory file name or it is a ordinary file name. So in the last modification time, if the user is just changing the permission or naming the file means or changing the file name means, so then last modification time will not be modified. Instead, it is going to retain the same time which was there before or previous. Okay, only if the content within that file has been modified. Okay, only the content within that file has been modified means then the last modification time will get changed. If not, if you have changed the permission of that owner or if you have changed the file name itself, okay, so then the last modification time will not get changed. Instead, it is going to change only what? The name of that file and the permission. But when actually the last modification time is going to be modified here is if you have modified the content within that file, okay, at that particular time or on that day. So in that time, any time if you have modified the content of that file, then the last modification time gets modified. Last column represents the name of the file. So this is about your ls-l command, what actually it displays. So the ls command lists out the files within the current directory, but if you have provided with few of the options like this what I have specified, okay, so like this -a, -x, capital X, f, r, l, u and t. So in that one of the option -l is always represented for listing the long listing content for that particular. It might be for a single file also. If you have just mentioned ls-l means in under whichever the directory the user is at the current directory, how many files you have, all those content will be listed out in this 7 columnar output. Okay, and in the 7 columnar output there it includes 9 output content. One is the first content is what? File type and permission. File type represent ordinary or device or directory file, and permission, for permission we do have 3 categories of permission for user, group and others. So user, group and others, whether it belongs to. Next, second column, link, file link, whether that file has been associated with any other file. Next, ownership of the file, group associated within that file, to which group this file has been associated. Next column, fifth column, displays the file size, but in terms of bytes, it is going to represent the amount of data, that to count of number of characters. Next, last modification time, 6th, 7th and 8th column, and the last column, 9th column, represents what? The file name. So this is about your ls-l command. I hope you people have understood, because I have written each and every content what it represents. So this is the first content, link content second, ownership, group associated with that file, file size, last modification time and file name. So this is about your ls-l command. So now so far I have discussed with what actually this ls-l command represent, right? So in the next concept we are going to discuss with what one of the other option which has been provided within this is -d option with ls. So I am going to just rub this and show you with the other option also of this ls command. So the other option of this ls command here is, other option of this ls command is -d. So this is going to list the directory file. List the directory files and attributes. So if the user want to list out the directory content and its attribute, means he can use with what? This -d option. So if I execute ls-l along with the what d means, so within the current directory on which the user is working, if a directory has been, if any directory files are there means, so then that will be displayed. So always in the first column output, it's file type and its permission, right? So this is going to be displayed like this. So this represents what? This is a directory file. This first character represents what? Directory file. This is file and this is permission. And second column link, and third column user. So this belongs to owner. Who is the owner? Next, group, which belongs to which group this directory file belongs to. Then file size. Next, last modification time. So this is last modified time. Last column is directory file name. So this represents the file name. Okay, so this is one of the option used along with -l also. So you can combine two of the option like this also, or else you can just use what? -d. So if you just use -d with an ls command, means it is going to just list out this. Okay, directory file will be just listed out. Only the directory file will get listed out. If you just use -d means directory file will get listed out. Okay, whereas if you want to list out the contents of the directory file, means a long listing output if you want, then you have to use that with what? -l then d. So you can combine two options together like this. So this is what the output you are going to get if you execute ls-l and d. So this is about your ls-l command, and one more is what? ls-d command. -d list the directory files and its attributes. So next, let us discuss with what? The file permission, the next content within this. So now we have discussed with the file attributes, right? So by using one of the option of the file, that is -l, ls command with an -l, we have discussed with what is the file content has been associated when you create any file. Okay, that long listing content has been discussed, and also we have discussed with what? One of the option, that is -d option also. So the next concept in this is what? File permission. So what is the file permission of the how we are going to know the file permission within the Unix operating system? The file permission and the ownership of the file. File permission and ownership of the file. So whenever user is going to create any file, okay, within the Unix operating system, always he is going to be associated, the system admin is going to locate that user to create the file. Okay, he is going to create as and when the user is going to create any of the file, he will be associated with the permission of that file. He will be owning that file by default. Okay, but if the user want to know with respect to the unique identification number and also the group identification number to which the file belongs to of that particular user, means at that time the system admin is going to locate that unique identification number and the group identification number of that file. Okay, so here first, as I said, once you create any file, so once you create a file, by default, user will own that file. User will own that file. He is the owner of that file. So if the user is Kumar means, and he has created, if the user is Kumar and he has created a file chapter 02 means the owner of this file is now what? Kumar. Chapter 2 file here. Likewise here, and as I said, once you create a file, a user identification number and a group identification number will be associated for each and every file. So that will be known under the directory file /etc/password. So this will get you the UID. So in the UID, that is unique identification number. So UID means unique identification number. Okay, so it is abbreviated as UID. So this will let you know the file number and name of the file. Whereas under this again you will get GID, that is this will just represent with the number, file number. Group ID, group identification number. GID is group identification number. Okay, so if the user want to know even the group ID name means, he has to look into under one more file directory, that is etc/group. So under this directory he can know about GID, that is the file name and the number associated within it. So these are the two file paths. So under this file path you can check out the user ID and the group identification number, and under this path you can check out with group ID, only the group ID, file name and the number. But if the user want to know like for that particular file what is the unique identification number and what is the group identification number within that current directory he is working means, so at that time one of the command is there in the Unix, that is ID command. So this is a command. Okay, ID command is used for displaying the UID and GID of your file, that is unique identification number and the group identification number of the file. So this is what ID command does. So ID command in the Unix, it is going to get you the unique identification number and the group identification number of that particular file under which he is working. So this is about your file ownership of the, that is how we are going to own your file. So as soon as you create a file, you can own that file. By default you will be the owner of that file, and if you, and always for each and every file a number will be associated. So that number will be associated under what? These two file path, etc/password, which gets you UID and GID both, /etc/group will get you what? GID. And if the user want to know particularly the ID means, that is the UID and the GID means, he has to execute with ID command. So next we'll discuss with what? The next is permission. So now we have looked into what? The ownership, how it will be owned. So next we'll discuss with the file permission. So what is this file permission? So in the long listing content, actually there it displayed with the permission, right? With 3 categories of permission it was displayed. So let me consider the same example of the previous one, ls-l. So it is going to display with me like hyphen. Let me consider the same example. So I am considering the same example of the previous one what I have took. Okay. So this is what so this is about your what, I think this is not, okay, let me make it more visible. Hyphen rwx r_r Kumar metal group, size of that file, then created on this date, with the file name chapter02. Okay. So this is what the long listing output you are going to be displayed if you execute -L. So if I am talking with respect to the permission means, so in the permission, this is what the permission has been associated for chapter02. So while understanding this permission, you should know about what? You should observe these these characters what have written on this board. That is, here the first character in the file type and its permission. So this represents the file type, right? Whereas this complete thing represent the file permission. So in this file permission, it has represented with 3 categories as I already discussed. So the first category belongs to this first group. This first category belongs to user. This category belongs to group. This category belongs to other. So always the permission for any of the file or the directory will be associated with 3 categories of user. So those 3 categories of user are what? One is the user itself, next is group user, okay, next is others. So other means publicly it has been accessible for anybody. Group means for example, in a if I have made a the file has to be accessed only for few of the user, like 4 to 5 user. If I have made a group means only those 5 members within a group can access that file. Okay, so that is what group represent here. Next, so here these 3 group categories of users in the file permission has been represented with all the 3 permission of the file. So those 3 file permissions are, one is user category. In the file permission we are going to know about the user categories. So in that user category we have user, group and others. So this is represented with U, this is represented with G, this is represented with O. Whereas next we will discuss with the permission itself. If I consider the file permission means, again here we do have 3 categories. One is read permission, write permission and execute permission. So read with R, W with write and X with execute. So these are the 3 categories of permission and 3 categories of user in which the file permission will be associated. So let me consider the first category of the user. Okay, here user itself, he has all the 3 permission, read, write and execute. If I consider the second category group, he has only the read permission, whereas write and execute permission is not present. In the other category, again only read permission, write and execute permission is not being assigned. So this is how a file permission will be understood in the Unix file system. Okay, so this is how it has been protected. The file permission has been protected within the Unix system. So you can make the file to be protected by assigning only few of the permission, either read permission, write permission or execute permission, or only the read permission or only the write permission or only the execute permission. So usually the owner of the file, that is the user itself, will have read, write, execute permission. Whereas if I consider a group category means, so under that we are not going to provide the execute permission also as well as write permission also. Even though if I provide the write permission means execute permission will not be provided. It is just for protecting that particular file. Likewise, if I consider a write that is others category means, always for other it is recommended that you provide only the read permission, that is R. Whereas write and executable permission shouldn't be provided. So this makes your Unix system file more safe and protective. So always in the Unix system file permission, it follows a 3-tiered file protection system which has been defined within this file system, Unix file system. Okay, so here it is going to follow 3-tiered file protection. So 3-tiered file protection means what? With 3 categories of file permission has been associated: user, group and other. So that is what the file permission is all about. That is how we are going to own a file and how the file permission you need to understand. When it has been created any file, these are the permission will be created. By default, this is what the permission will be created for once you create a file. So read, write, executable permission will be provided for the user, that is the owner itself, whereas read permission will be provided on only read permission will be provided for group and others. So this is about your file ownership and the file permission. So we do have the next concept in this is what? Now we have looked into what file permission, right? So which is the command used for actually changing the permission of that file. Okay, so how we are going to change the permission of that particular file. So let me go with that command now. Which is the command used for changing the file permission, that is chmod. So this is one of the command used for changing the file permission in your Unix system or in your Unix file system. So in the Unix file system, this is command chmod, chmod. Ch represents change, mod represent modify. Modify means you are modifying the file permission for 3 categories of user. So we do have a syntax for following this. Okay, so that is chmod, okay, followed by chmod followed by category, operation. So operation, category, operation, then we do have permission, then the file name. So this is what the syntax of using this chmod command. So category represents user, group and others, whereas operation represent either you are assigning or removing the permission. Assigning the permission or removing the permission. So permission represents what? Either you are providing read, write and executable. This represents the file name. So these are the arguments you have to provide for what? chmod. One is category, operation, permission and file name. So if I consider this operation, how you are going to assign? So for assigning, always you are going to use the plus operator. For removing, always you are going to use hyphen operator. So hyphen operator is used for what? Removing the permission. Plus is for assigning the permission for that particular file which you have given. So if you give plus RWX, so this represent what? You have representing read, write and executable permission for that particular kind of user. Okay. So we'll look into this more with an example in in the next coming session. So within this, in the chmod, that is changing the file permission, we can categorize this changing the file permission. We can make understand even more better within 2 ways. That is, in 2 ways you can understand how to change the file permission. So the one way is relative permission, and the next one is what? Absolute permission. So you can provide or assign the permission in these 2 modes. One is relative permission and the other one is absolute permission. So one is relative permission and the other one is absolute permission. So this is how you are going to understand the changing the file permission in the Unix system. So this is the syntax, and in 2 ways we are going to understand the assigning the permission. So this will assign only for the current directory, whereas this will assign the permission for the complete final permission will be assigned by using this absolute. Relative means you can change as and when you want. So that is about your changing the file permission using with the command chmod. So in today's session we have discussed with what actually you are going to understand with the module 2, those concepts, followed by in that first chapter is what? File attributes and permission. So in that we have already discussed with the file attributes by using an ls command. So this ls command is going to list out the file content or the attributes itself by using one of the option along with that, that is -l. So ls -l command. So it is going to list the long listing content, displaying the content in an ASCII sequence. So in that it will get you the 7 output, columnar output. So those 7 columnar output is what? 1 file type and permission, link, then ownership, group ownership, next file size, last modification time 6th, 7th and 8th, and 9th column is file name itself. And -d option also we have discussed, followed by file ownership we have discussed, followed by we have discussed with file permission, and the command used is what? chmod command. This is the syntax, and in these two ways we are going to understand the changing the file permission. So in the next class or in the next session we will understand with this relative and absolute permission how we are going to apply. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you all.